Guys, welcome back to Mid-Level Media, and it is time for my top 10 post-apocalyptic films. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I hope everybody is doing well out there, staying safe among all this quarantine madness that we're in right now in the world. And you know, to be honest, I haven't been able to keep up my YouTube like I wanted to. I'm trying to get back into it this week. And for this particular video, I'm going off of a request for, if you watch my video where I said no more movies are coming out, what's next? I asked the question, what would you guys like to see on this channel? And one of the comments I got on that video was from one of my followers on Instagram who is also subscribed to me here on YouTube, and his name is Triboro Gigolo. And he asked, what's your top 10 favorite post-apocalyptic movies? That would be a cool episode to do. So I'm going to take that comment and I'm going to turn it into an episode. This is going to be my top 10 post-apocalyptic films. And when I got to start thinking about the genre, at first I thought, man, I'm just not that well versed in this genre. There's a lot of films that I haven't seen, particularly for the past few years. I didn't know if I was prepared to do a list like this, but then I started to think outside the box a little bit. And there might be some movies on this list that you all haven't necessarily thought of as post-apocalyptic, but when I got to start thinking about them and just what they are at their core and the themes and the values that they incorporate, they're absolutely post-apocalyptic films. So there might be some outside the box choices on this list, some interesting picks that you might not have on yours, but I definitely think they qualify for mine. So let's get started with some honorable mentions before we get into the actual top 10. So for my honorable mentions, I have WALL-E, which is a Pixar film that surprisingly is not one of my favorites. I appreciate it for the quality, for the cinematic quality it brings. I just can't engage with the story that much, and I've seen it a couple times, and maybe I need to watch it again, but it's just not one of my favorites. And to be honest, I don't get the love for it, but it is a post-apocalyptic movie. It is a very well done animated film by Pixar, who does not put out bad movies, unless you count Cars 2, but it's a good enough post-apocalyptic film to make it in my honorable mentions. Now, the other film I'm going to put in my honorable mentions is a movie that I probably haven't seen since the 90s. It's a made-for-TV movie. It's a Stephen King adaptation, and it's The Stand. So maybe if I had rewatched this movie, it might have ended up in my top 10. But as of right now, and I actually have the VHS for that movie right up there if you can see it. But as of right now, it's an honorable mention because I don't remember a lot from that film. Now we're going to get into my top 10. So like I said, there's going to be some outside the box choices on here. There's going to be some movies that might not be in yours. First one is a film called Cargo. And this is a Netflix movie that came out in 2018. And it's starring Martin Freeman. This is a very different kind of post-apocalyptic movie. So it starts off and him and his wife are on a boat and they're trying to isolate from what's going on in the world. Like there has been a zombie outbreak and something happens, and basically Martin Freeman's character is left with just him and his baby, and he has to navigate kind of, I think they're in Australia, but the Australian outback alone, and they run into people along the way, and it's just a really cool kind of engaging, I would call this more of a drama, but it's actually kind of a drama horror movie, and it's surprisingly emotional, has some real emotional aspects to it. So that is my number 10. I really enjoyed that film when I watched it, and it deserves a spot on this list. So if you haven't checked out Cargo, definitely give that a watch on Netflix at some point. So my number 9 on this list is Zombieland. And I love Zombieland. I think it's a great kind of parody action comedy movie. It has a great cast. You got Woody Harrelson, you got Emma Stone, Abigail Breslin, Jesse Eisenberg, like all these people before they like really popped in the cinematic world. I mean, Woody Harrelson's been a star for a long time, but the other ones were kind of on the rise at this point. And it's just a really fun movie, and I watched it like a year ago and it still holds up. I don't think the sequel was as good, but I do really enjoy Zombieland, and it is absolutely a post-apocalyptic film. It takes place after the apocalypse. So let's move on to number 8, and we're going to have fun with this one. Waterworld is an absolute cheese fest from the 90s. It's completely ridiculous. But I love this movie. And a few years ago, well, actually last year, I bought the Arrow video set, and I rewatched it, and it's such a fun, just epic adventure film with Kevin Costner at the peak of his stardom. And you got Dennis Hopper in there, just completely ridiculous, over-the-top villain performance. And it's a really fun movie. I just really like it a lot, and it's not like a cinematic masterpiece or anything, but it's just a really fun movie that I enjoy from the 90s. So Waterworld is my number 8. So let's move on to number 7, and this is an actual cinematic masterpiece, but it's also a movie that I had not seen in a long time, and if I watched it again, maybe it would move up further on my list, and that is Children of Men, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and I believe this movie came out in 2006. So I actually saw this movie in 2006, but I have not seen it since. And I remember it being really good, and I loved the movie. I can't remember a lot about it, other than in the storyline. It's just a really cool, thought-provoking story with great visuals, and it's just great visual artistry, of course, with Alfonso Cuarón. He's a master of the craft, making this film, and it's an amazing movie, and I definitely recommend it if you haven't seen that. So Children of Men, starring Clive Owen. You know, when Clive Owen was at the top of his game back in the day. You remember when Clive Owen was a thing? That was pretty cool, right? Well, let's move on to number 6. This is another movie that I haven't seen since it came out, but I love this movie, and it just completely recontextualized what I believe this franchise could be, and that's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And I also love Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but that's not a post-apocalyptic movie. This is because it takes place after the end of the world. See the difference? So this is just such a good movie, starring Gary Oldman, Kerry Russell. It's such a great cast in this movie. Of course, Andy Serkis as Caesar, like just some of the best, probably the best ever motion capture work in any film is him as Caesar, and definitely one of the best performances. This is just a really cool movie with some really cool war scenes, and you know, I like War for the Planet of the Apes, but it did not live up to my expectations following this, if I'm being honest. So this, in my opinion, is probably the best in the entire trilogy, and it's a phenomenal film. So if you haven't seen that one, definitely check that one out too. Alright guys, so we're getting ready to enter our top 5. And before we go ahead and do that, I'm going to ask that you please just take a second, just a small second, just to click that like button down there. If you like what you see, if you like this video, if you want to see more videos, help me out in this YouTube algorithm that's kicking us all down right now. Just drop me a like right there. Give me a comment, like what are some of your favorite post-apocalyptic films? It takes just 2 seconds. Engage a little bit with my video. It would mean the world to me. And if you're not a subscriber of the mid-level channel, go ahead and subscribe right now. And that's all I got to say, guys. Let's move on with the top 10. So coming in at number 5, we have a John Carpenter film, and you all probably knew it was coming, but it's Escape from New York. And it's one of the most badass, just classic action movies, and it's another one I haven't seen in years, and I need to revisit it. But I remember really loving this film when I was a kid, along with a lot of John Carpenter's work, and it's just one of the greatest action hero characters in Snake Plissken. And it's a shame that they kind of ruined it a little bit with Escape from LA, which is not as good. But yeah, this is just a classic movie. Escape from New York, number 5. So let's go on to number 4. And number 4 is a movie that I remembered really liking, but when I watched it again recently, it held up so well. I actually ended up loving this movie way more than I did the first time I watched it, and that's I Am Legend. And this is one of Will Smith's best movies, in my opinion. This is one of his best performances, and it's because he really is the driving force behind this entire movie. And I truly believe that if he was not in it, If it was not him in this kind of performance at this level of his career, I don't think this movie would have worked at all. And it's really just, out of all the movies on this list, the lone survivor in the post-apocalypse. It's really hard thing to make work, and this movie absolutely does it. It's because Will Smith is so great. It's emotional. He carries the emotion of the story so well, just with him by himself, with his dog, of course, and just some of the scenes in this movie are heart-wrenching. And this movie's from 2007, so some of the CGI doesn't hold up as well, and it kind of it plays a little goofy. I wish somebody would go in and kind of redo it a little bit and retool it to make it look better, but this is a phenomenal movie and I love it. So that's I Am Legend at number 4. So let's move on to number 3 in our post-apocalyptic countdown, and that is, of course, what some could consider one of the best of the decade of the 2010s. That is Mad Max Fury Road. So this movie starring, you got Tom Hardy, you got Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron in maybe one of the most kick-ass female action roles of the entire last decade. And she's such a versatile actress, just phenomenal. And this is directed by George Miller, came out in 2015, and a lot of people do regard this as one of the best films of the entire decade. The visuals are stunning and amazing. Performances are fantastic. Just what George Miller did with this movie is incredible, and it is such a testament to what cinema can be and how it can be art, because this movie is a painting come to life. It is fantastic, and I will always appreciate it for that, even though personally I don't regard this movie as one of the best of the decade. It probably wouldn't make my top 10. There's some story elements that don't really play to me, but I do appreciate this film a lot, and it's definitely one of the best post-apocalyptic films, hands down. So that is Mad Max Fury Road at number 3. So let's move on to the top 2, guys, and this is where we get into kind of my unique choices, I would say, for this type of list, because I don't think a lot of people would consider these two post-apocalyptic films. So let's get into it, guys. My number 2 post-apocalyptic film is Blade Runner 2049. And I think everybody can agree that Blade Runner 2049 is a fantastic film. It's definitely one of my favorites of the last decade. But I don't think a lot of people would agree that it's post-apocalyptic. So let me break this down for you. So while I don't consider Blade Runner post-apocalyptic, it largely takes place within the city of LA during this time period, and it doesn't look like it's post-apocalyptic. Now, Blade Runner 2049 really branches out, and you get to see the ruins of some of these cities in this world, and it's 30 years later, and you get to see these underground communities come up and cities in ruins, and there's a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff in this movie, and it has that feel, in particular the second half. So while I think that this might be the best film on this list, I won't put it at number 1 because I don't think it's entirely in the post-apocalyptic realm. You know, the first 30 to 45 minutes take place in the city that the original took place in as well. So, but I do think that this movie has a lot of post-apocalyptic feel and things in it, and definitely enough for me to put this in my top 10 post-apocalyptic films of all time. So let's move on to number 1, guys. We are at number 1. And another movie that I don't think a lot of people would consider post-apocalyptic, but if you really think about it, it is. And that's 1999, directed by the Wachowskis, and that is The Matrix. So The Matrix is absolutely a post-apocalyptic film. It is, even though most of the movie is within the Matrix, within the real world, so it doesn't have that post-apocalyptic feel entirely. But when you come out of the Matrix, you are in a post-apocalyptic world. The world has been in ruins. People are in tubes. And this is a post-apocalyptic story, hands down. And it's a landmark film for the sci-fi action genre. One of the best of all time. Just for what it did, for its effects, for its action sequences, the choreography. Keanu Reeves as Neo is just iconic. You got Carrie Ann Moss as Trinity, Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, it's an incredible movie, and it absolutely stands the test of time. It's one I need to rewatch again that I recently got on 4K, and yeah, it's a fantastic movie, guys. So The Matrix is my number one. So what do you guys think of my list? Are there any that you disagree with? I'm betting that there probably is. And so if you disagree, if you want to talk about it, go ahead and comment down below. Drop me your top 10 post-apocalyptic films of all time. And let's talk about it. Let's have a debate. I love top 10 lists. I love seeing movies, ranking them, talking about them, arguing, having healthy debates over it. It's fantastic. So go ahead and comment down below your top 10 post-apocalyptic films, or top 5, or just your favorites. And like I said, go ahead and drop me a like right there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram at Mid-Level Movie Reviews. You can follow me at Mid-Level Media on Instagram. You can DM me. I'll take requests. Whatever you guys want, I'll deliver here on the Mid-Level Media channel. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.